Excellencies, distinguished participants, greetings from the blue Pacific continent, Nisambula Vinaka from Suva in Fiji. I am delighted to join you today for the screening of Stories from the Blue Frontier. I'd like to thank, first of all, the governments of Germany and Fiji and their permanent representations in Geneva for bringing together this important conversation. It is on the lived realities of communities on the front lines of the crisis. Not long ago, climate change and related responses were essentially framed as environmental issues, with targets, national plans, and voluntary pledges. That framing was not wrong, but it was incomplete, because behind every degree of warming, there are people who lose their homes, their livelihoods, and their very capacity to remain on the land their families have inhabited for generations, and to navigate the seas that have shaped their identity. But the stories that you will watch today are not only stories of loss and vulnerability. They are stories of resilience, dignity, and traditional knowledge. Across Fiji and the wider Pacific, communities are already responding to the impacts of sea level rise, coastal erosion, extreme weather events, changing ecosystems, food and water insecurity, and other threats to livelihoods and to their human rights. The shift to a broader, more inclusive and more human rights-focused understanding of the impact of climate change has gathered momentum as these communities and individuals on the front lines, including from indigenous territories around the world, rejected the notion that their futures were somehow negotiable and insisted instead on their right to thrive and not merely survive. Environmental human rights defenders, grassroots movements, a generation of youth and student advocates demanded that states and institutions respond. And so they did. In 2021, the Human Rights Council recognized the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment as a human right. In 2022, the General Assembly affirmed it universally. In 2025, the International Court of Justice advisory opinion recognized that states have human rights obligations to act in response to climate change, and in May of this year, 2026, the General Assembly endorsed a resolution affirming its key findings. So climate action is not merely a matter of policy choice or perhaps moral aspiration, it's a matter of human rights, of justice and intergenerational responsibility. States must not view climate action as hindering economic progress either. They must support a conscious decision to ensure a just transition. The standard of due diligence required is quite stringent, and it extends to the regulation of private actors, corporations, including fossil fuel companies that are operating in their territory or jurisdiction. States that do not act, including by failing to regulate those whose activities drive climate harm, may be considered to have committed an internationally wrongful act. But the countries most affected by the crisis are not waiting for others to save them. From the Pacific, Vanuatu's leadership throughout the process of requesting and recognizing the ICJ advisory opinion signals political will and action, including at the Human Rights Council. Distinguished audience, one of the most significant human rights dimensions of climate change in the Pacific is climate mobility and migration. Communities are increasingly making difficult choices, whether to stay or move temporarily or permanently. For Pacific peoples, mobility is deeply connected to culture, to identity, land, and to oceans. This understanding is reflected in the Pacific Regional Framework on Climate Mobility, which represents a landmark commitment endorsed by the leaders of the Pacific Islands Forum in 2023 with support from the United Nations and other partners. It addresses climate mobility in a way that places people, their agency and empowerment at the center. This framework and its implementation plan that my office has helped to conceptualize recognize the importance of staying in place where possible and planned relocation, migration and responses to displacement, which are community-led, inclusive and informed by traditional knowledge. At the same time, ensuring the protection of human rights of affected persons throughout every stage of mobility. For the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in the Pacific, climate change remains a key human rights priority. Our work supports specific countries and communities to strengthen human rights-based approaches to climate action through advocacy, technical cooperation, research, engagement with regional processes, and enabling the participation of those most affected. We further believe it is important to protect civic space and to directly support and fund civil society organizations so that they may continue their policy work with governments and their grassroots engagement with communities and litigation. Under the powerful slogan, "We are not drowning, we are fighting," the Pacific has long been a voice for climate justice. The knowledge, the leadership and solutions emerging from Pacific people must continue to guide global responses to the climate crisis, including at the Human Rights Council. As we watch these films, their stories call on us not only to listen, but to act with urgency, solidarity, and respect for human rights. Vinaka Vakalevu from Suva, and best wishes for a successful event. Thank you.